document those nebulous, somewhere out there agreements.
Right, okay.
So if we could turn to that next section, Section B on page 16, let me address sort of your fund balances. As I alluded to before you got here, Mr. Ark, the fact that the county financially is structurally balanced, you have considerable reserves, you've been adding to them over the years, and as a result, on the left-hand side, we're comparing what we call your rainy day fund. That is dollars that are not spoken for, called unassigned fund balance, versus your revenues, annual revenues. On the right-hand side, we compared them to the annual expenditures. So you'd expect them to be roughly the same, and they are. And what you'll notice is that your unassigned, again, that's the critical revenue source, critical monies, fund balance, is basically equal to about 100% of annual revenues or annual expenditures. That is a very strong number. That gives us opportunities, and we want to show you, when we say that's strong, what we mean and why we mean that. So if you go to page 17, let's look at how the National Credit Rating Agency, Moody's Investors Service, we call it Moody's, is one of the 2 or 3 major services. How they compare you to both your Virginia peers, nationally, as well as some of the local peers. And so if you'll notice there, in the end of 2021, in just sheer dollars, you had about $15.7 million in that unassigned fund balance. On the right-hand side, that translated into about 88.5% of your general fund, revenues of the general fund. And what you'll notice is if you look down, especially on the right-hand side, as a percentage, that 88% is far greater than anyone else. Virginia budget, regional, national, even Virginia-wide, very highly rated credits we call double and single A. So, on the left-hand side, just the sheer dollars, even though you're a modest-sized county, was still very, very good. So, what does it tell us? It tells us that you're in a very good position. What it also tells us is that we really should have a policy so we don't get reckless about those monies. And so our recommendation to staff that we will present to you is that you should have at least $10 million set aside, or roughly 50% of unassigned fund balance. I will tell you, when you look at the right-hand side, if you go to that roughly $10 million, that's about 56%, and it's still better than everybody else, better than all the other averages. And we think that's important because if you've got the uncertainties with landfill, and we also know you've got a lot of pent-up capital needs, it's important to have that extra cushion, and that's what we'd like to suggest. Doesn't mean you have to do that, but you have effectively right now no policy. You have no policy. It's just been, you've just been, if you want to call it, stocking those monies. You've just basically been, piling those monies up. So on page 18, we do the comparison again, except now we took what we call total fund balance, because you have got a couple of pots of money that are also tied into some other needs. Katie knows that better than I do. And once again, that is also healthy. And if we said to ourselves, if we used about 5.7 million, what we still have is over 12 million of general fund balance dollars. On the right-hand side, you can see once again, that's a very, very hefty percentage. Even when we use some of those dollars, and we were going to suggest, here's what we'd like to suggest, that 5.7 million, think of it this way. Instead of having 15.7, if you went to 10, that extra 5.7, we would redeploy, repurpose it, and create some type of capital reserve account to be used strategically for capital projects. You're still going to be and look better than all of your neighbors and all of the national and regional averages. So we like that thought, again, but that's why we're here tonight, is to start to introduce some strategy and some planning. So with that said, let's talk about your debt profile, because that is important as we start talking about plans of finance. You got to know where you're starting from. What's your starting point? So if you go to page 20, this is what your portfolio looks like. And we went back to 2021 purposely, even though we're in 2022. What you'll see is that by the end of this fiscal year, just a few short months away, this county will basically have a grand total of $1 million of debt outstanding. That's it. Now, some people may think that sounds like a lot, $1 million. Well, it's not. And you're going to see that in a few minutes, how that compares. You are basically under-leveraged. You're not using debt as a tool effectively, and that's important. Debt should not be a crutch like the federal government, where it doesn't pay its debt off, keeps rolling its debt. We, on the other hand, would look at it as a tool to help us do things strategically. So, the important takeaways, number one, is in 2021, when Katie set up with the budget, she had to put aside, I'm rounding off here, $400,000, a little over $400,000 in the 21 budget to pay for the bills of debt. By 2022, this year, we're down to about $250,000 a year. And we stay there for a little bit, drops down again to about $150,000 in 2026, and is all done before the end of the decade. So you're in a very strong position to consider doing some indebtedness and not in any way be guilty of putting it on to the next generation. So let's go to page 21, and let's talk about what we call a 10-year payout ratio. It's a fancy way of saying that if you are fortunate to have a mortgage, and let's say that mortgage is $100,000 on a house, how many dollars after 10 years of a typical 30-year mortgage has been paid off? You have paid 100% of the mortgage off by the end of 10 years. The average in local governments is typically around 50%. And you sort of see that on the right-hand side. But again, what you've got is a very rapid payout. If you do some debt, it's going to slow down, and that's fine. But we also want to make sure we do this in a materially, again, way that's defensible and sustainable. So we're going to shoot for roughly anywhere from 45% to 50% in doing some borrowing, considering you have effectively no debt right now. Okay. So let's go to page 22. We've got a couple more ratios that we're going to recommend that you have policy for, but just to give you a perspective. So I said earlier, that we should look at debt capacity. And what that means here is if we look at this ratio, which is just the sheer amount of debt that you would borrow versus the assessed value of the county. When I talk about assessed value, I'm talking about the real estate taxable assessed value. So this property, for example, let's assume it's worth $1 million, doesn't count towards that assessed value because it's not taxable. It's a governmental operation. But if you have a home and your home is worth $100,000, that counts towards the assessed value. So what the overall Moody's folks say is if you can be anywhere from roughly up to perhaps about 4% debt to assessed value, that's going to be considered moderate, solid. Anything under about 2% is considered strong. You are at 1/10 of 1%, because effectively you have no debt. The averages, and I would argue you can go to any of these averages, they're going to be higher. But if you look at the Virginia AA at the very bottom, that means highly rated Virginia counties. They have a level of debt versus you on average at 17 times. So what does that mean in terms of what you could borrow? Capacity-wise, anywhere from around $25 to $50 million could be outstanding, and you'd be within that gray, or actually gray, that tan range, that gold tan range. So that's the first takeaway. That's theoretical. That's great, but that's not really how you pay the bills. The next one is how you pay the bills, page 23. And that is your debt service versus expenditures. Fancy way of saying, what's your credit card, okay? So you may have a credit limit of $5,000, but the question is, how much can you afford to pay every month? Doesn't mean you can afford to pay what the 5,000 translates into. So what this says is that you basically don't want to go above 10 to 12 cents on every dollar that you have. So think of it this way. Again, you have a home, you have an annual income, and let's say you divide it by monthly, and your monthly income is $1,000. Just go for me. It says you really shouldn't have more than $100 to $120 a month of debt service. 10% of $1,000, $100. That's what they're sort of saying. Now, if you have a mortgage, typically they say, lenders say this, and I would think you know, Mrs. Shackleton, you're an expert, probably 25 to 30% at most of that $1,000 should be a mortgage, maybe 25%. In your case, in local governments, we don't want to go past pretty much 10 or 12%. Where are you right now? You are at 0.7, not even 7%, you're at 0.7. So again, almost nothing in your budget is going towards debt service. Compare that again to the Virginia AA's, that dark green, it is 10 times what you are. It's 7.6%, and you'll see what Moody's says there. If anything under 8% is basically AAA, very strong. So you have a long way to go before anyone would think that you're being irresponsible when it comes time to borrow some money. That's the takeaway, okay? So with that said, let's go to the one page right after that, page 24. This is once again something I showed you earlier, and that is your existing debt. It drops down. You were in 2021 and you had a balanced budget and you were able to fund $400,000 of debt service. That's going to be a recurring theme in the next few minutes. We're going to recommend that for the upcoming budget, irrespective of what happens, you budget at least $400,000. And we think, again, subject to the expertise of Ted and Katie, we think that's a reasonable assumption for 2023, because if you look at your history, you've always had at least $150,000 of extra dollars. And I think you even had some more than that, as you know. So we think that's why I wanted to show you that. So think of that as being what you continue to budget out into the future, about $400,000. That's an important takeaway for what goes to the last section here, which is page 25, our initial overview of a capital plan. As we start to think about what to do and take care of, on page 26, that $30 million of projects that has been identified for us. So, as we said, these are just a repeat of what was in the very beginning of the presentation. The admin courthouse facility, roughly $23 million was provided to us. Public safety radio, some $5 million. Animal control, $1.7 million. New software financially, $300,000. All comes to $30 million. The timing is not quite known. The exact bidding, not quite known. So this is what we did as a starting point in the next couple pages. So, page 27, here's how we started to think about a plan. First thing we recognize is interest rates are still hovering at 50 to 60-year lows, yet they've been rising. They rose again today, and that's exactly what the Federal Reserve wants to do. They want rates to go up. But they have been so low, and considering my 40 years in this business, never seen them this low, that again, it is a good time to think about making some investments. Second, your debt will all be repaid in the next 5 or 6 years. Third, as I said, your debt continues to drop down, but again, we would like to suggest using a $400,000 level. And then the next point is, in the middle, 1 penny of your real estate is roughly $100,000. Why am I bringing that up? Because ultimately, when we talk about taking care of projects and paying for it, we like to just give you a sense of what the equivalent penny impact would be to do something. Not suggesting you go raise the real estate, but we want to give it to you as a sense of an order of magnitude when we talk about projects. So I always like to make that clear why I use the term equivalent real estate tax rate, as opposed to that's what you should be doing. And then the last couple of points here is this. That $5.7 million that I talked about, that you have already, we should take that, create some type of capital reserve account, and use it strategically. And you're going to see how we do that in the next few moments. And then lastly, you have, as you know, a local reuse authority. It's a little over $5 million. We have not factored that in at all. I would defer to staff on that. That is not in any way put in to these cash flows. Okay, so on page 28, before we actually show you our initial thinking about how to fund some of this, I'll tell you what we took the liberty of doing. And we did this, so you can blame us, not staff. It's not $30 million anymore. What we did is on the first phase, it was a contingency escalation, and we basically added 20% to that first series of dollars. So the 1.7 animal control, public safety at 5, new software, those three things come to $7 million. We instead want to show you a plan that involves $8.5 million, a 20% jump only because of inflation. We may be wrong on that. We may be over. We may be under. If I was a betting man, I'd say we're probably under still. Everything just seems to be going up right now, very much so. So that's the first thing. Then we said to ourselves, all right, some of these things are so urgent, and the construction time frame is pretty quick. We should be considering some sort of funding this summer once you get through your 2023 budget deliberations, which should be done May, June timeframe. We like to think that made sense, and that number's around $8.5 million. We then said that you could start planning and looking at the admin court facility, but that really would start roughly 2 years later. Part of our thinking was, again, your staff is only so limited resources. Doing multiple projects with such limited resources, not realistic. The environment is such that we think such a big project like the admin courthouse is going to take a lot of planning, a lot of strategy. So again, we're thinking of that being a couple of years out. The other thing about that is with regard to solar revenues, to the extent that there can be some light, no pun intended, with regard to those revenues, the likelihood, that'll play into an amended capital plan. But the takeaway on this is what I'm going to show you on the next couple of pages. So that is this, all right? On page 29, what we're suggesting is that you can feel comfortable going after and taking and addressing those first three capital needs, the animal control, the public safety, and the new software, assuming it's $8.5 million, that order of magnitude, and that you can do that sooner rather than later. There's no need to waste another year hoping, wondering, what have you. And remember, I said we would do this, if you did this, once the budget has been done and finalized. And so if there is any surprises that staff sees that will somehow change this, you've not yet committed yourself to moving forward. So again, it's a cautious approach, but first getting your budget done, first letting Ted and Katie feel comfortable or how comfortable they are so that if you do undertake this, they've already got the budget set up the way they like for 23. The next couple points is this. If you go to page 30, for the citizens, here's what we can do collectively. We believe that in this general interest rate environment, we could fund $8.5 million of projects by strategically using that $5.7 million in the shaded area to pay for debt service that goes over and above $400,000 a year. That's what we're saying, with no need to ask the citizens for the equivalent real estate tax rate increase. No need. So there's no need to go and scare the community that you need to raise taxes for these projects in this approach. To the extent that solar revenues or other revenues from economic development or other natural growth occurs by virtue of reassessment, what have you, all of that is a positive. Because again, this allows you to get going. Now, having said that, let's go to page 31, and it really is basically pretty much my last page or two. Then we said to ourselves, okay, let's assume we have that 5.7 million. But now, 2 years later, we want to and need to do that courthouse admin facility. Well, I want to tell you the good news here is that that middle point, the equivalent real estate is 14 cents. It's actually 10 cents, and that should be 10. And I've said that that is my fault in terms of not setting it up that way. But here's the point. We would actually be able to deploy that 5.7 million in such a way that we would then need the equivalent of 10 cents starting roughly in fiscal year 2031. Now, I would not in any way recommend a plan where you wait till 2031 to do an equivalent of 10 pennies. But what I think could happen, and the takeaway for this board tonight, is if we're thinking about long-term planning and we don't get the benefit of landfill that gets better than, let's say, a $350,000 a year hit, we don't get the benefit of solar revenues or other economic development, we should be thinking about probably needing and setting in motion the equivalent of 3 pennies for 3 years in a row, starting in a year or two, to get it going. And that's probably what would be prudent to take care of all these needs. Because again, I believe that that $23 million is understated. I think it could easily be $30 million. So we might need more than that here. Maybe it's a penny or two, or we need some other things to help us. But at least we wanted you to see what we're talking about in a relative impact. And then lastly, the last page, page 32 here, is this. If you look at Nottoway and your tax rate, what we just wanted to show you is how you compare to your peers. Your peer median, which those in the light blue below you, is 63 cents. You're at 48. Differential of about 15 cents. So even if over time you ended up adding a dime to that, roughly, you're still comparing favorably. That said, if you look at your immediate folks around you, while it's true that Lunenburg and Mecklenburg are lower than you, the others around you are either at or higher. And it's interesting. Brunswick, for example, who we work with, I don't do it day to day, but my firm does. They had to raise their real estate taxes 12 cents. They did actually on real estate to take care of a multiple of projects. They did that at one time. Greensville, you can see where they are, a little bit higher. Dinwiddie, again, more urbanized. But Amelia is the same as you. Prince Edward's a few pennies higher. Charlotte is, again, basically right there about the peer median. So there's no right or wrong, but we just wanted you to see where you are competitive-wise to your neighbors. And again, we're not suggesting it's real estate that you raise, but it's if you did, if it was the decision over a period of time, that's where you could relatively look to versus others. So then just lastly, in a summary, since this is already done, everything I've said, is the county is in a solid financial position. There's no need to be paralyzed by inaction. You believe you could move forward. You've got very high level of reserves, and you can continue to very high level of reserves, but it's time to use and deploy some of those reserves strategically. I would recommend you start that this summer. And I think, again, you think about a 3 to 6 year plan that does probably the equivalent of about 10 pennies. Establishing that capital reserve is necessary. And then lastly, establishing financial policy guidelines so that you're operating within white lines that are going to be there for subsequent boards. So it makes it harder for a rogue board to say, well, just go spend all this or not do anything. They now have some parameters. With that, I've been long-winded, I'm sorry, but again, I think there's a whole lot tonight, and I appreciate your letting us do this, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Simmons, do you have any questions for Mr. Rose?
No, I do not.
Mr. Vaughn? Mr. Rourke?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to clarify something from back where the previous budgets from 2016 to currently, and the practice of having the board believe that there was, the expenditures was gonna the expenditures was gonna be more than the revenues. And I know we had talked about this before, but what exactly was that practice for?
I can't speak to what the practice was for since I was not here and I don't know your prior leadership. Again, I can only speculate, and I'm sure that's not a good thing. All I can say is that year in and year out, you did not use reserves to balance your budget.
Right.
You did not.
I mean, am I wrong in assuming that this basically was set up to do nothing?
Again, it would not be right of me to speculate on that. You have a much better sense than I do. The only thing I would say is that if I were in your chair as a board member, and I saw that the expectation was that, for example, in 2021, for example, that I was told that expenditures were going to be $1.4 million greater than my revenues, that would put a dampening effect, at least on me, if I were in your chair, on being and feeling good about, let's say, doing some new initiatives. I would worry about that. Because again, that difference, if it didn't come from fund balances, your rainy day fund, is the equivalent of about 14 pennies, just to take care of recurring revenues,
Right.
recurring expenditures, excuse me.
Right.
So again, I'll leave it to you, Mr. Ark, but that's how I would interpret it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Bowen, do you have any questions?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. So not really a question, just comment to the board, and thank you for that comprehensive financial overview. Mr. Rose, that was very, very clear. And one thing that I really liked what he did, and it really, on that page 29, when he calls it a funding approach, they basically, he started off saying we have a healthy fund balance. And when you have a healthy fund balance, I just want to tell the board, the buzzards are coming. I mean, I'm letting you know they're going to be coming. And John, you were late, and I'm going to swell your head up a little bit because you've been preaching this since the only Achilles heel that we have, and Gary, it's nothing against how you run the landfill. The Achilles heel is our landfill. It's what's taking money out of the fund. And you've been preaching from day one to do some type of waste study, but I think it got miscommunicated to the board. Well, not your fault, whoever, how we perceived it. You're looking at privatizing the landfill, but that's not what your intent was at
No,
all.
absolutely
And
not.
he clarified that before you came in here. So I want to thank you for offering that. And I think the reason I'm bringing that up, because that is our Achilles heel, and again, I'll say again, Gary, don't you get mad at me when we walk out of here, because it's none way you were managing it, that we should look at maybe in this year's budget, talking to Ted and see if we should start that process of that waste study, Absolutely. And what I really like about the plan is, and we need to do this, board, we need to do we need to work in an orderly yet progressive way, so we can still remain in good financial, healthy shape. And I think that's what they have done, Davenport has done here tonight, with a plan.
I've never been against a study.
Okay.
I am
I
against
thought-
privatizing.
Yeah, I got you. But what I was saying is, I don't think that was Mr. Rourke's intent.
Nope.
At all.
The Lord has changed his.
I shouldn't have said that. I really started something that I should have. But, all right, but we all agree maybe we should ask Ted about a study in this year's budget.
Let's stick with that.
Okay,
Let's
thank you.
just stick with that.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me have the floor.
Mr. Rose, I just have one brief question. On page 23, if we establish a 10 to 12% policy level, does that put us above the national and state averages?
So it would put you above
23.
some of the national averages. Yes, it would. So again, my thinking is this: a 10% range is very much defensible, considering that you really have done so little for so long that I don't want to create something that you'd be going over. But as long as you keep within that guideline, and I'll give you an example of this. We work with Chesterfield County. I remember about, don't hold me to it, I'm not scientific, but maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I remember Chesterfield had a policy not to go above 10%. And they were AAA, so they're the highest you could possibly rating-wise, okay? But they also knew that with some of the referendums that had gotten passed in that period of time, that their projection was for a couple years, they were going to go above 10% and be like 11% plus. And that was fine because they had a policy. They knew they were going to broach that policy just a little bit for a couple period of years, and then they would get underneath it. So overall, they were keeping within the spirit of that. And the rating agencies were fine with that. And today, they're probably in the 7 or 8% range because they're that much stronger. They've absorbed it all. We're about to do another referendum, I believe, for Chesterfield this coming year. I think so, but for schools. But I'm just saying the point here is I think we're okay if we did something in that range because, again, we just have so little that we've done. And you have so much that you need to do. But we wouldn't want to go past that, is the thinking.
Madam Chair, could I follow up on that? I just want to make sure I get my clarity right here. You were talking about the 3-cent raise for 3 years in consecutive years, maybe start within a year. That 3 to 6 year span, were you talking about we should get that up to that 9, 10 cent range in that 3 to 6 year time frame now? Okay.
So that's what I'm talking about. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right. And again, that number, the reason I bring that up as opposed to all at once, let's say, I can't speak for Brunswick, I don't work with, our firm does, but I don't. The point is that to the extent other revenues can help allow you not to have to use that. I think of the real estate almost as a last resort. You know, that's sort of how I kind of think about it.
Yeah, because they got election year next year. Y'all gonna raise it?
No, of course not. So, Madam Chair, I want to kind of answer John's question with my view of, because it was a good question, you know, how do we keep increasing? And just, I think you really hammered it, Mr. Rose really hammered it. When we would do a budget, John, I mean, I think we had in my brain, I'm gonna say, when I say we, let me say I had a conservative view of what our revenue was coming in. And just like he's saying it's a penny for 100,000, I always thought it was a penny 85,000. And see, that's just little things I'm saying that added up. And thank goodness it helped us, but not to go the other way. But you know, so I've learned a lot more about local government since that time. But I just wanted you to know that's we should have done a financial plan a long time ago, in my opinion. But Ms. Rose can't help me with that one either. But anyway, all right. I just want to say that because John, it was a good question.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Rose, thank you so much. We sure
Thank you.
appreciate this.
Appreciate being here.
Great
Thank you.
information.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, do y'all think Mr. Vaughn's going to love this? That we should have a work session to possibly discuss the timeframes for these projects and to get a plan for how to build. And when I say this, it's because looking at the complex down the road, should we have a discussion now as to whether or not are we going to separate the Sheriff's Department from that complex? And if so, should we possibly look at that Sheriff's Office in this initial thing when the communications go up? Because what's it going to cost to move the communications over there. Like if it's $10,000 to move the communication system to the new sheriff's office, I don't have a problem with that. But if it's $1 million later on, you know, once we get the communications up.
Oh, you're saying if we're building infrastructure in this, in the existing, what's gonna cost if we have to move all that?
Right.
Right.
Oh,
If it's 10 grand, you know, not that big a deal, but if it's $1 million, should we make that concerted effort now to discuss, are we doing a 2-story building, or are we gonna have the sheriff's office separated from that? If that's the case, should we be looking at the sheriff's office with this communications now?
I think it's all good discussion to have, but I think as Mr. Rose recommended, maybe waiting until we get through the budget process and seeing
Good
where
question.
we are. What do you think? And
Madam Chair, members of the board, kind of went through this in Greensville, when we were literally moving out of the city of Emporia into a complex, site. And that was a greenfield site. Everything was built from the ground up. It was a completely vacant property, regional jail all the way out to the front where the county administration building is. It's an engineering process and it's a planning process. This right now is a financial planning process to set aside, but when you get into the particulars of where should this go, where should that go, that's where you get into starting to talk about retaining an architectural engineering firm. And everybody says architecture, well, you know, do I want square windows or round windows? No, it's really space utilization and how function, you know, interactions are. So, yes, we should, but we're a little too early in the game
Okay.
right now for that conversation.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, because,
Good thought.
Facility study.
right. Yeah, because I mean, I know we need to do the communication center. I mean, I know, I mean, we've all seen that thing going out. I mean, we know that's got to get done. And I'm just trying to say, if there's $1 million cost in there,
Well,
it's just,
and there may be, and this is just some speculation, okay, there may be a way that the sheriff's office is separated from the dispatch center, and where it sits right now could become a dispatch, a communication center.
Right.
That's a possibility. I know the sheriff and I have talked about, wow, wouldn't it be great if his office, communication center, big open space that converts to an EOC? Those are those things that you kind of have to work through in a group setting to decide, okay, what's the right thing to do?
right, because what you're essentially talking about is like where the existing sheriff's office is, that is only communications, then built on from that.
That's one option.
Right,
That's
exactly.
one
That,
option.
those type of things make sense. So, you know, I just want to make sure we're covering our bases.
You're spot on, just early.
Okay.
right, thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is a presentation on solar energy revenue generation by Mr. John Anzavino, the county's transition advisor. Mr. Anzavino, welcome back. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of the board.
Hello.
Good to see you all again. And I'm going to try to take a very complex topic and distill it down into simple terms as much as possible. And recognizing that you've had several work sessions over the last couple of weeks, and I know you had one that was an interesting one last night, make it as short as possible. I provided you with a memorandum with several attachments which outline what I'm going to be discussing this evening. What I wanted to address this evening is where the county is in regard to generation of solar revenues, because you already have the ability to do that. It's called the default method. What alternatives exist to you as a county to generate maybe more revenues and take advantage of changes in state law that allow you to gather additional funds? And then what are your next steps in the process? So, as I've noted in the past at your joint work session, you've had a moratorium on receipt of solar applications. I was originally under the impression that it was in December of 2020, but it actually went back to 2019. The files I had said 2020. It actually went back to 2019. So it's almost 2 years since you've placed a moratorium on receipt of solar facility applications, while the Planning Commission worked to address the needs of the county, doing a better job of reviewing the applications which may be coming in given the new standards and the new rules and the new tools that are provided by the state. So we've been working on, as you know, revising the special exception permit of the process of the zoning ordinance to kind of strengthen it and broaden it. So if when the county does decide to remove the moratorium after you've adopted the special exception changes, that you'll have a good process in place that will protect the citizens of the county, your natural resources, the wildlife, everything that goes into making Nottoway County a good place to live. I will be meeting again with the Planning Commission next Tuesday evening, along with Mr. Zodi, and I've incorporated changes in the draft ordinance with comments from the public hearing, some comments that I've received from the Planning Commission as well, so that we have an ordinance which addresses what the public's perceptions and the Planning Commission's perceptions of a strong ordinance are. If the Planning Commission decides to move that forward to the Board of Supervisors for public hearing, that could come to you as early as next Thursday evening for your consideration and establishment of a public hearing date. Or it could come the following month in March at your March 17th meeting. The Planning Commission has up to 60 days from the public hearing that they held to move this forward to the Board of Supervisors for consideration. And as I understand it and recall, if not, it comes as is, without any changes in the draft. So, looking at page 2, revenue generating options for solar facilities. There's basically 3 ways that you can generate revenues. You get increased real estate tax. Believe it or not, well, not believe it or not, it's actually, you can see it happening out there. Southside Virginia is a great place to put a solar farm or energy generating facility, primarily because the land's available and it's relatively inexpensive. So land which is being taxed at maybe $1,000 an acre, when you put solar panels on it, you're going to generate more revenue. And that could be up to $10,000 to $15,000 per acre, based upon information provided through the Rural Solar Development Coalition. So you'll get additional revenues from increased real estate tax on the property, and then the solar panels and the equipment that goes into the solar facility itself. The machinery and tools tax will increase considerably. You also have an option now under state law of adopting what's called a revenue share ordinance. And what that does is it allows you to have a steady stream of income without interference from the state and changing any of the depreciation schedules that go into the machinery and tools calculations. It's set at $1,400 per acre for the facility. And the state, in their wisdom, and I hadn't seen this before in other types of programs like this, they have an escalator. So in 5 years, that goes up 10%. And then 5 years later, it goes up 10%. It takes into account some form of inflation. So it does provide you with a source of revenue. So now you've got the default, which you currently have, where you do machinery and tools, real estate, and then you go to the revenue share as a second option. The third option is what they call a siting agreement option. We have written into the amendments to the special exception permit process the ability under state law, which is authorized under state law for the county to be able to negotiate siting agreements for all facilities over 5 megawatts of generating capacity. The siting agreement, are you familiar with the term proffers? Okay, proffers are in Virginia, popular method of extracting monies from developers for the fiscal impacts that they create when they develop a project. Very popular in Northern Virginia in high growth areas, but now highly regulated by the state because the local governments may be were a little bit too zealous in their approach to extracting proffers from developers. But this is a negotiated agreement, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a second, but it allows you to gain income beyond the machinery and tools tax method or the default method or the revenue share method. So right now, as I've noted at the bottom of page 2, the county is generating revenues for solar, if you had any. We don't have any, but you would be generating from the default option. And there's a table at the top of page 3 which lays out how that is, how those assessed values, how they are assessed, and what the depreciation rate is. And note at the top, it says that you've got 2 tiers. You've got 5 to 25 megawatts, and you've got greater than 25 megawatts to 150 megawatts. And there is a depreciation schedule, and that is set by the State Corporation Commission. But on the smaller units, the smaller megawatt generating plants, 5 to 25 megawatts, you have to use your machinery and tools rate. On your greater than 25 megawatts and your 100 to 150 megawatts, you've got to apply your real estate rate. And so there are 2 ways to calculate that. And there are variables in all of this. And the important thing, too, is to understand, too, when you site a solar facility, there is a potential impact, which varies by locality, of the revenues to be generated. You can't compare, say, a facility in Charlotte County to Nottoway County because of the way things lay in Charlotte County versus Nottoway County. And you also have to consider that there may be some impacts on the state's per pupil contribution based on the composite index of local ability to pay. And that's true for all power generating facilities in the Commonwealth. I remember when I was in my prior life in the private sector, we did a impact assessment of the Clover facility, the Clover generating facility down in Halifax County, and how much revenue it was going to generate for Halifax, but then what the impact was on the composite index. And that was like about 15 years ago, so don't remember all of the details, but there was an impact. These facilities are much less capital intensive than the facility that you had down at Clover, so there may be a slight increase or decrease or impact on the composite index. A second option for generating revenues, as I noted, is revenue sharing. This was allowed to, well, it was put in place in 2019, took effect July 1st, 2020, and it's not, if you have facilities in your community, it's not retroactive. So this would be applied to all the facilities coming forward. And as I said, it's on $1,400, per megawatt of nameplate capacity of the generating facility, not acreage, $1,400 per megawatt for all of those facilities larger than 5 megawatts. It does have an indirect impact on the state's per pupil contribution based upon the composite index. And there is a difference in the way these are calculated based upon the depreciation schedules and based upon other factors that go into the formula of tax generation. If you used revenue sharing as your option, you have to adopt a separate ordinance to do that. You may have less revenue generated for those facilities less than 20 megawatts in generating capacity than you would for those than you currently have under the default method. Okay, so a couple key points there. You have to, if you want to do revenue share, have a steady stream of revenue, you have to adopt an ordinance. And I've included a draft ordinance. I had drafted one up, but I decided to send you Prince Edward since it's gone to public hearing. So you can see what it looks like, and it's attached in your package. That requires an ordinance. If you decide to do nothing, you fall back to the default, and you use the machinery and tools method, and you generate revenue still. But I'm going to show you a couple of models that we've run using the State University of Virginia Mines, Minerals, and Energy models to show you what the impacts are between the revenue share and the current default ordinance. You can't do both. You can't do both. You've got to make a choice. And in some cases, in talking to several county administrators who have been working on this recently, talking to the Rural Solar Coalition folks, if you want a steady stream of revenue, most localities are choosing to go with the revenue share. Again, the depreciation schedule that you see here, if you stay with your default method, that can be adjusted by the state at any time, and it can have a greater impact on the revenue stream that you have. If you have a revenue share ordinance, it stays in place. And on page 4, again, we've shown you the difference between no revenue share ordinance enacted and the revenue share ordinance, and how those revenues are generated. It's fairly complicated. It's not something you do every day. It's something the Commission of Revenue does every day. The third option that helps you generate more revenue is a new option as well. It's called the host reciting agreement. And many counties are working to do this, and because of that, I've included that as part of your special exception permit ordinance. It requires a solar developer, whether it be a battery storage facility or a solar farm, which is you're going to generate electricity, to notify you that they're going to file an application and to sit down with you, go over what's going to happen, and begin to negotiate a siting agreement, which talks about the revenues. It is completely separate from the special exception process, and it can move concurrently with the special exception process, but it is something that needs to be executed prior to adoption of the special exception. If you were to move forward with a host reciting agreement, and I've included that section of the code, this is for all facilities greater than 5 megawatts of generating capability, up to 150 megawatts. And as I noted, they have to give you a written intent that they're going to file and request a meeting with the county, and typically with the staff initially and then with the board. And that starts the negotiating process. The siting agreement can include terms and conditions, including mitigation of any impacts of such solar project or energy storage project, financial compensation to the host locality to address capital needs set out in the capital improvement plan adopted by the host locality, the current fiscal budget of the host locality, or the fiscal fund balance policy adopted by the host locality, or assistance by the applicant in deployment of broadband as defined in such locality. So Mr. Rose's presentation tonight and the direction that the county is taking is in harmony and right on point with doing something with solar revenues. And it allows you, as Mr. Rose was saying, they didn't include any revenues into their debt calculations from solar, but it allows you to put those into your capital improvement plan, into your budget for operations, into broadband. And, so you've got, if you decided to go, when you begin to discuss siting agreements with these solar providers, it will put you in a position where you've got to make some decisions as to where that money may need to go. Is it going to go into your capital budget? Is it going to go into your operating budget to support operations? Is it going to go into solar? And you have needs in all those areas. There is an individual agreement negotiated for each application which comes forward to you, whether it be 5 megawatts or 150 megawatts. You're going to be doing this. And Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, it's going to be a much more complicated world for you. But it's going to be a more rewarding world for you too, if you just, as you process these solar facility applications. In talking to Vivian Giles, the county's attorney, he really knows solar issues here in the state extremely well. She said, essentially what I've said. She said that essentially, though, you've got to make a choice between one of the two methods of generating revenues. I have attached a siting agreement. It's relatively long. It's 16 pages. It's not something that you see very often as a board, but it is something that you would be negotiating on a frequent basis if you had applications coming in. Now, really getting to the crux of the matter, how much money can you generate from a solar application? As I said, the University of Virginia and the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy, which is really involved in solar, is they developed a model that the county has access to, and all counties have access to. And included as attachments 4, 5, and 6 are 3 model runs that I did on behalf of Nottoway County on a solar facility. All 3 are from actual applications in other localities, so that you can see what the difference is. Well, first of all, what the potential revenue stream is coming from a solar facility, and secondly, what the difference is between revenue share and machinery and tools tax. So on page, attachment 4, this is for, and this includes the county's current tax rates. These are automatically plugged in at the University of Virginia at the Institute of Government. So we have the county's real property rate of 47 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, machinery and tools tax rate of $1.35. And we're looking here at a project which is 1 megawatt, a very, very small project of generating capacity. It's got total capitalized investment of $19 million. It's being built on 116 acres in another county. And inside the fenced acreage area, which is defined as your project area here in Nottoway County, they're using 18 acres. So that's where the value increases. And in this particular community, the application noted the base land value is $1,000 per acre because it's undeveloped. The inside the fence land value, or the project area land value, moved up to $15,000 per acre. And so when you punch the numbers into the model, you come up with a run, which is shown on the next 2 pages, and it shows the total expected lifetime revenues, both on a cumulative rate and on a discounted rate, taking into account the fact that the time value of money, and that money value over 40 years depreciate. $1 today is not worth what $1 is 40 years from now. So as you can see, with a 1 megawatt facility, on the right side of page 1 of attachment 4, revenue share generates $50,000 of income over the life of the project. The machinery and tools real estate tax generates $436,000, and that's in the discounted 6% per year value. In actuality, the revenues generated for the machinery and tools and the non-discounted values, the revenue share is $167,000, and the machinery and tools rate, and this is on page 3 of attachment 4, is $1,222,000. So that would be if the value of the dollar increased 6% per year for the life of the schedule. So you can see here that you get a lot of money from machinery and tools, less money from revenue share for a 1 megawatt facility with the parameters that we've run. And so that might be attractive to some communities to say, well, gee, that's really a good deal. Look at the magnitude of the difference between the revenue share and the machinery and tools. Well, let's take a look at a larger facility. So on attachment 5 of page 1, you see that we have a facility here, again, using Nottaway's parameters, a capitalized investment of $98.1 million, 91 megawatts being built on 610 acres. Inside the fence or project area is 30 acres. And the base land value was $1,000 and it moved up to $10,000 per acre. On the right side of that first page, you'll see that the revenue share amount generated is almost $2.5 million, and the machinery and tools tax rate was $874,000. So the increase from the revenue share over the machinery and tools is about $1.6 million. And even when you take the non-discounted value of money, the magnitude of the revenues generated by the revenue share is far greater than the machinery and tools. And then the last example that I had an opportunity to run for you is a 150 megawatt facility, which may sound like a number that you've heard before, and a total capitalized investment of $18.360 million. It's proposed to be built on 1,800 acres. Inside the fence area or project area is 760 acres, and conservatively, the base land value is $1,000 per acre, increasing to $10,000 inside the fenced area or project area. And in this project, over the 40-year life expectancy of the project, revenue share generates 3.9, almost $4 million, versus the machinery and tools tax rate of $890,000. So there's a net gain there of the revenue share over the machinery and tools of just a little bit over $3 million. So these are all calculated without your siting agreement, which is additional money which comes into play. And the siting money can either be in lump sum or it can be extended out over a period of time dependent upon what you negotiate. So there's more funds available, but that's not factored into the model because every siting agreement is different and there aren't consistent factors. So with all of that said, we've set the board up to think about a decision that you would like to make, maybe not like to make in the future. But as we move forward with the Planning Commission's work, which may be coming to you soon, you'll need to set a public hearing date for the revisions to the renewable energy section of the zoning ordinance, the special exceptions section. Then you'll also need to decide whether or not you want to move with the revenue sharing method or you want to retain the default method. You know, my suggestion to you is to take a hard look at the revenue sharing method, because in many of the cases, the conversations I've had with other managers and administrators, it sounds attractive to do the default method because, you know, essentially seems like a lot less work. It's more work for the commissioner probably. But for the board, it's a lot less work. You don't have to adopt an ordinance. You don't have to go through the public hearing. But I think if you look at it, it takes one big project to really have an impact of maybe 15 or 20 smaller projects to make up that difference between the revenue sharing versus the default method of calculation. So if you got a lot of small projects in Nottoway County, you know, the default method might be okay to use. If you've got some big projects, you're going to lose revenue. Also, you need to understand too, in thinking about solar projects in Nottoway County, we've written a pretty tight ordinance. And there are there's a limited amount of locations that solar facilities can go in any community. They have to be, as I understand it, within a mile of a transmission line of enough capacity to be able to take the power that they're generating. The county's got two major transmission lines, one in the southern section of the county and one in the central section of the county. So you've got a couple of corridors that'll probably be, focal points for solar. So you're not gonna have little projects popping up all over the county hooking on to, power lines. So that you're probably gonna be looking at larger projects, anywhere between 25 to 150 megawatts. But you have to decide what you want to do. What we would suggest is I've drafted up an ordinance similar to the ones that's in your package, that you authorize staff to move forward with having the county attorney review that and have that ready to go on a parallel train with your public hearing for your special exception changes when that gets to you from the Planning Commission. So in closing, I've tried to take a very complex subject, distill it down to a few minutes, and give you some ideas as to, what the pros and cons are of both methods. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ms. Simmons, do you have any questions?
No, no, thank you.
Mr. Vaughn?
Do you have to ask? Mr. Anzavino, number one, thank you.
Yeah, this is
I
great.
think it's clear that we well appreciate your efforts in this endeavor here. I've read it, I've heard you speak several times, and my head still hurts. I'm gonna lean on y'all for some clarity on this. I won't lie. This may be a fruitless question here, but does there seem to be an average size of these facilities?
Well, if you'll note the three examples that I put together, the 1 megawatt is closer into northern Virginia. The bigger one is in Southside Virginia. The one in the middle is on the farthest edge of what I would consider to be northern Virginia. It's in between Charlottesville and Manassas.
Okay.
And it seems to be dependent upon the availability of acreage and the appetite of potential developers to build these types of facilities as to what size they'll be. I don't think there's an average facility.
Okay. The other question I would have is, in the ordinance, the draft ordinance itself, is there something, and there again, you may have told me this, and I just may honestly have mistaken the information, misplaced the information in my head. Is there something that gives the county the option to not approve if it's considered to be prime forest and prime farming land?
That's a consideration, yes. Matter of fact, there's legislation, I didn't touch on the various aspects of the legislation that's being considered, but for facilities under 20 megawatts of power generation capacity now, they're going to go to what they call the rule method of application, which means that to get an approval through the State Corporation Commission, they have to do studies on prime farmland as well as forestry land for the smaller facilities. Larger facilities are still governed by the ability of the local government to request those. That's included in your ordinance.
Okay.
And there are two aspects of that I should touch on. One is, if it's less than 10% prime agricultural land, then, it's not really considered to be a big impact. Anything above that gives the Board of Supervisors an ability to ask for a mitigation plan, whatever that might be. For forestry land, there's no percentage set, but prime forestry land as defined by the State Division of Forestry is a consideration that the Planning Commission would be making in their deliberation process of recommending to the board or approval or denial of the application. So those are being looked at. Matter of fact, there's also a study now that has popped up. It's being considered by the General Assembly as part of the legislation to do an assessment, not of that prime agricultural land, but of forestry land as part of the, to get a better handle on where the prime forestry lands are.
That's across the street then, is that right?
Pardon?
Is that across the state in that,
Yes,
study?
yes, yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay,
Yeah,
all right, good.
That's state legislation.
Okay,
That's under consideration now. So yes, and the board, in your siting agreement discussions, which are separate from the zoning, okay? You can turn down a siting agreement, and you don't really have to give a reason. But that factors into the decision-making. It cannot be the sole reason for making an adverse decision against an application for the land use, but it can factor into that.
okay.
And so you've got your planning and zoning going on, you've got your site discussions going on, siting agreement discussions going on, and they probably are gonna go on concurrently, and you have a lot of leverage now that you didn't have under your current ordinance, because your current ordinance was written before solar, nobody even really thought about what the impacts were, okay? You've got a lot more leverage now to consider applications and deal with them and the impacts. Wildlife, habitat, visual. You know, you have a section in your zoning ordinance that if there's a visual infringement upon an area, and you've got good setbacks. I mean, we've proposed setbacks 150 feet from the road with a landscape buffer area, 400 feet from, I think it's 400 feet from a residence, maybe it's 500 feet from a residence, but there's still a buffer. But even then, if the topography, you put that buffer in and you're down in a bowl, you still have the ability to require additional things or maybe reject the project.
Okay. And the last question I had was, do we have a map of those transmission lines that run through the county?
It's pretty crude. We tried to get it from the PJM.
Good question.
PJM guys, which
That's
are
what
the
we'll-
big power grid.
Mhm.
But I have a map. It's on a VDOT map of the county, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you,
Mr. Bowen?
Yeah, just one question and then a comment going with John, the transmission lines that's in the county. So I got the planning commission package already, and I just want the board to know that Mr. Anzavino had listened to the public hearing that we've already had and pretty much addressed and read all those, you know, and he doesn't say you should do this. He goes, here's something to think about, blah, blah, blah. And so my question is, I want to get I call it my solar clock here now, Mr. Anzavino. We got a planning commission Tuesday night. Let's say they don't, they still can't get it. We can't get there. They got 30 more days after tomorrow night. Okay.
You
All
can
right.
defer it one more time.
I got you. And then they make a recommendation, then the board, like, let's say they did make it, the board says, okay, we're gonna do a public hearing. After the public hearing, do we have to have a public hearing to lift the moratorium, or can we do it right after? Right, my question is, once we make the changes in our zoning ordinance, can we lift the moratorium immediately after that?
I think the board, based upon what I've seen in the records, you just passed a motion imposing the moratorium on receipt of applications. You didn't pass an ordinance.
Oh, okay.
So it would be probably a motion to, I'll have to check that in more detail, but, you know, if it is a motion, all you have to do is adopt a motion lifting the moratorium, and then you've got applications, you know, the application process reopens.
Yeah, I just want, you know, because you see how things are kind of, and I'm with you. I thought it was 2022, 2020 also, not 2019. So that was the comment. So, and the reason why I think the transmission lines map is pretty nice. I have approximately like 90 acres of land, and 10 acres of my land is transmission lines, and my brother's got 10 or 15 acres transmission lines. And the reason I'm telling you that is, I can't do anything what I want to do with that land. I can't build a pool up under there. I can't grow a tree up under there. But I still pay taxes on that land, and it's valued as the rest of my land. Right? It's not. That's right. It's valued all with the land.
Well, you need to talk to a county
so what
official.
I'm getting at is some land. The transmission lines. If we knew how much land that was, they can't use it for what they want to anyway. Right. Except for farmland, a cow can walk up under it. Yep. Yeah. But if you got trees, like if you got pines, you can't put that on that power. In fact, they cut when Dominion Power comes in there every 10 years. They cut back the trees that I own if it gets too big, because they think it's gonna touch their power line. So, I'm just letting you know, there's a lot of land in Nottaway County, it can't be used where we think we can use it.
Yeah.
Railroad, the same way, I'm just telling you. Anyway, I just wanna throw that out there because, anyway, something to think about.
You know, I think an important thing to consider as you look at the zoning ordinance and these models is, you've got a 1,900 acre parcel that someone is going to acquire in some way, shape, or form, and they're only building on 700 acres of it. They've got buffer, they've got wetland considerations, they've got a number of other factors that they have to consider where they place their panels. And so, you're right, there's a lot of, it's actually almost preserved land.
Yeah,
to a certain
that's why I
extent.
put it, right.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, just wanna throw that out to the board, something to be thinking about, but I'd like to see that map too.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Yeah, that's interesting.
thank you,
I'll
Madam
have it
Chair.
at the planning commission on Tuesday.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Anzavino, thank you so much.
Okay,
It's
thank
been
you.
real interesting. Okay, final item on tonight's agenda, we'll have a status update on our fiscal year 22-23 budget by County Administrator Ted Costin.
And I'd like to rectify something. My wife owns that land, I'm just part of the party. Let me clarify that since we've been taped. She lets me live there.
Hey, Katie, are y'all passing out readers with these?
All right, Madam Chairman, members of the board, one of Mr. Bowen's favorite phrases, I have some good news for you and I have some bad news
Oh,
for you.
God.
Okay, so, Ms. Tomer's been great working up the budget, sitting at that computer and tapping in numbers, which I don't have the patience for. But we've met and talked with a lot of the staff, Mr. Easter, Mr. Zodi, Mr. Hyde, the sheriff. So we've gotten a lot of materials in. Folks were fairly responsive with the new format of the budget forms that we sent out. And we've got a couple that are still outstanding. I'm not going to call anybody out, but I will tell you that many of the notes that I have here to go over with you in my presentation, they went out the window about 10 minutes into Mr. Rose's presentation because Ms. Tomer received the school board first cut budget. And it, yeah, we were really happy for a little while. We were looking at having estimated the school board office, some discussions that we've had with the school board staff in last year's numbers. We were looking at expenses that have been requested against this year's current revenue budget. We were going to be about 800,000 to the good. However, the information tonight's kind of thrown a little bit of a kink in that. Obviously, we'll go back and refine the numbers that we have given you this evening. Again, everything you've got right now is expense side, okay? Revenue side, we have to work on. I will tell you that right now, this current fiscal year, we are ahead in our revenues. They're coming in better than we had been estimated last year. Let me tell you, though, that we have been able to, and these are, again, when I say we've been able to, or, we're recommending, these are all proposals. At the end of the day, you all will have the decision. But staff so far in this document has been able to completely fund all requests that we've received from all non-governmental organizations. That includes the Virginia Legal Aid, Piedmont Senior Resources, Crossroads, Habitat for Community, Veterans Council, Madeline's House, so on and so forth. ARPA funding. And where we stand on ARPA funding is we have obligated 1.3 out of $1.5 million. That funding has to be obligated by 2024 and expended by 2026. Know that we are expecting another $1.5 million in ARPA funds. That has not been built into the budget. I don't intend to build that into the budget, and therefore there have been no commitments made on any of that money. You'll have some proposals in the budget which include a 5% increase in all salaries. That's county employees, constitutional officers. This keeps us competitive with the state and with surrounding jurisdictions. And of course, what that means is that impacts fringe such as retirement and insurance calculations. Now, this next point is very, very much connected to what you heard earlier from Mr. Rose and from Mr. Anzavino. We are creating a capital improvements fund so that monies can be set aside for the projects that we've discussed, utilizing some of the general fund reserve money. Now, these are those large projects, those long-term projects, but we are trying to distinguish capital projects from run-of-the-mill capital outlay. In the budget documents, I asked folks to consider anything over $100,000 as a capital project, and anything less than that as just a regular operation expense. So when the sheriff is turning over cars, that's really not a large capital. It's a running expense.
That did not sound right. Turning over cars.
Well, yeah.
And they will turn one over
Yeah,
on
they-
someone.
yeah, I've seen a couple in the back parking lot.
We ain't here to
But that's
take up for
okay,
us.
they're insured. We're good, they're insured. All right. Thank you again, Mr. Rourke, for messing me up here.
Sorry,
Okay,
Lord.
so I also want you all to know that when you look at the county administration budget, you'll see a fairly significant large increase of about $156,000. That is because we have moved the data processing line items into the county administration, because that's really where that work is being done. So don't panic, that's really not an increase overall, it's just an increase in one budget having been taken out of another departmental budget. We are restructuring the departmental budgets. We have done some elimination of certain lines, such as the miscellaneous line item. If we could dig down and figure out what it was, if it was miscellaneous line item turned out to be widgets, we created a widgets line item. So we're trying to be a little bit more transparent and open about, okay, what are these line items and how they're used. We've implemented a uniform identification for accounting codes. Now, most department budgets had a travel line item, but not all. We've put that in consistently through all the departments. Not all of the departments had training line items. If the board will recall, during one of my interviews, you asked me what I thought about the importance of employee training. I gave you an answer. Now you're seeing that answer put into practice. We have created a line item in all the departments for repairs and maintenance, and also a line item for all departments for dues and memberships. There are quite a number of good organizations that are out there that are specific to someone's area of work, expertise, continuing education, networking, those sorts of things. I think you're all familiar with that. I want to spend a little bit of time on some of the public safety issues. Now, 2 of the 3 fire companies responded with to our budget request utilizing our forms. One of those provided some very good information that we felt like, even though the other 2 companies didn't ask for it or cite it, we spread that singular request across all 3 companies. Those were to provide for Knox box upgrades, as well as computer-aided dispatching. Now, as to the rescue, we had one company provided the necessary forms and the information, and we still included both of the rescue operations into that computer-assisted dispatch project. 3 of the 4 agencies have joined together to utilize a single emergency medical director, which is required for EMS and first responders organizations to have. For those 3, funding has been recommended. The Board of Zoning Appeals, they have been paid on a mileage basis for each meeting that they attended. whereas the planning commission has been paid for each meeting attended. We've converted the BZA payment to match that of the planning commission. Now, we're going to break out a little bit and talk about the LRA. We propose that the LRA become a separate fund to better distinguish the authority from you, the County Board of Supervisors. And this will allow the LRA land sales fund balance to be put to use for maintenance of the LRA properties. All right, you heard Mr. Rose say that there is a backlog of projects at the county. The same can be said for the LRA. There's work out there that needs to be done, everything from replacing roofs to painting buildings, and that's where that money would come from to pick up and maintain those properties. We, of course, would also look at the leasing agreements, and if we've got a better place that we're offering folks, we should be able to charge a better price. Solid waste fees. Okay, well, I'm beating up Secretariat here. We are looking at being charged more. Mr. Rose mentioned that the regulations of landfills, which Mr. Easter is familiar with, in the operations, basically equates to having to spend more money. Mr. Easter had an inspection, and as a result of the inspection, had to go out and buy a load of gravel to put in a check dam. I mean, those little things come along, because of the regulations. We've already given you a memo suggesting, in fact, recommending and strongly recommending that you do consider increasing fees associated with the landfill. But we also, not just about, I've said this before, it's not just about increasing fees, it's also about finding some other ways that we can cut some money. I am proposing the landfill be closed 1 day a week, and I have also done some things, we're trying to do some things in the office to make the billing, the administrative efficiencies result in some cost savings as well. Now, despite trying to cut back on expenses, one thing that I have put in the budget, or recommending be put in the budget, is a telephone at each of the convenience centers. I think this is more of a public safety issue. If we have someone slip, fall, one of the workers, gets their hand caught up in a piece of equipment or something like that, we need to have some reliable communications on site. We're also considering, as part of the budget for the landfill, entering into lease agreements for equipment. We are looking at leasing, we've built in the budget, a lease of 3 pieces of equipment for a year. That lease would be less expensive than what we have had to pay out for repairs on the equipment that we have right now. And of course, we would look to try to kick that into some revenue. If those pieces of equipment are no longer viable for us, we maybe can sell them and get something back for those. Now, I've got to go back with Ms. Tomer and work in what I heard tonight, a solid waste study into the budget, as well as rework some numbers now that we have an initial draft from the school board. And I'd be happy to take any questions you all have. I know you're seeing the document for the first time tonight. This is just an ongoing process, and we'll be there by July 1st. I guarantee you that.
Mr. Bowen, you have any questions?
Yeah, a couple, and Ted, thank you too, and thank you for, giving us something before we leave, so we stay up at night. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Call
But
me,
anyway,
call me anytime.
okay.
I'll probably be up too.
So the LRA, I hear you. Do you think and you've preached this to us. You said, listen, Steve, it needs to be a separate entity from the board. I mean, so what you've done here, you've made it like a separate budget also, is the way I'm seeing it. Mm-hmm. Do you think, and this is a question to the board, do you think that since we're doing that maybe the vice chair should chair that meeting, to make it a little
more distinct?
I'm just throwing that out, and if so, what can we do to make that happen? Because I'm all about that,
We have, if I can, I didn't know are you finished? I didn't
Yeah,
wanna
I'm
cut
just
you off.
throwing out ideas here.
Absolutely. I was just going to tell you, Greensville, the Water and Sewer Authority, They met as a board, and they would close their board meeting and then go into the authority meeting, and yes, the gavel slid over to the next chair.
Okay, I got you. All right, so somebody want to take a look at it.
It doesn't,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to be the vice, but that's just what
Right.
they had there.
And going to the other, going back to John's question again, so I mentioned, you're always confused on the revenue, you know, why did we keep gaining? That school budget drives me crazy. Katie, you know, sometimes I think I understand it, and then all of a sudden, and it sounds like it even throws you guys for a loop. So, I don't know. That is our other Achilles heel, right? And John, what had happened over the years, the squeaky wheel keeps getting the funding, and we got projects to do now, and we got sheriff's department, we got communications, and they've just been there, and so that's why I'm saying that we just need to stand fast, and I'm telling y'all, we got to learn to say no. You know, I mean, it's hard to do it sometimes, but anyway, especially when people see you got money in the bank, you know. So anyway, that's all.
Madam Chairman, if I can add on to Mr. Boland's comment, in every line item in that budget, it's important to somebody.
Yeah.
There's a lot, you know, people are, you know, are crazy about animals, animal shelter.
Yeah.
People are crazy about books, the library.
Right.
You go through the whole budget, something is important to somebody.
That's right.
And sometimes you've got to do that balancing act that, okay, you know, this group has really gotten, you know, for a lot of years, throttle back, because you
Right.
got to take care of somebody else.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I got, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Simmons?
I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and I agree, every line item is important to certain people. So, can't put one over top of the other, because they're all important. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Vaughn?
All the presentations have been good tonight,
Yes.
I feel. When do we meet with the departments?
We
I
have,
think it's at 4 o'clock one day.
we were looking at having a work session with the board where the departments could come in and present to you if they had difficulties with what the staff was coming up with. So we've got to go back and rework these numbers. I'll offer up some dates.
Okay.
But it sounds like they put some fires out for us already, Mr. Vaughn. Which is good.
Mr. Rourke, you got questions on the budget?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Vaughn was over there thinking, darn it, John, I thought I was going home. First of all, I want to just pass this tidbit on to you guys to see if y'all made aware of this, because it could be something that we may have to fall back into if something does not fall through with PSR. As I understand it, the Virginia Department of Health, there's a SWAP grant program out there. It's Water Sewer Assistance Program. They got $11.5 million in it. This was just passed like back in August. And if there is any type of, and of course I have to get with PSR, this just came to me late this evening, to find out what their standing is. Are they going to be filing grants for our citizens here in Nottoway? If not, this is something we need to get out into the public here. So when you're talking about the 5%, Ted, that does include our deputies, correct?
That's across the board. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
all right.
Constitutional,
Across the board?
Well, because you know the jail is intending to get the starting salaries up on deep into the $40,000 plus dollars. So we may need to be looking down the road and budgeting and trying to get our deputies somewhere near $50,000 in the coming years, their starting salary. Because if not, we're going to be losing them to the jail. So,
That's a good observation. This is exactly why I'm going with the 5%, because that's what the state's giving, and typically you end up competing with the state, or you end up competing with the locality.
okay.
I hadn't thought about the regional jail, so that's a good point, Mr. Bork.
Okay, now, when you're talking about closing the landfill, now, do the employees, are they losing salary, and if so, how do they feel about this?
Mr. Easter and I have had a conversation. It depends on what day you're talking about. I'm proposing a Saturday. Folks have said that's probably not the best day, but, you know, there's only 7 days to pick from.
Right.
And we're already closed on Sunday.
I just I mean, I understand what
Right.
you're trying to say, but I just hate the thought of putting our employees out of funds.
It's not the employees we need to
So-
think about, it's the citizens.
Well, I understand that too, but I mean, they're relying on this.
May I interject? Mr. Easter, would you be willing to offer your opinion about closing the landfill? Do you mind, Mr. Costin, if we?
I'm not the smartest guy in the room, he is.
Trust me, I'm not either. We talked about, trying to bring down some costs. Saturday is really the best day. It's one of our less productive days. We are just there, tell the truth. Summertime, around about 9, 10 o'clock, we get no more traffic. Maybe one car here and there. The convenience centers are open, so it really wouldn't hurt us any. And I told Mr. Costas, what we do right now is to keep from accumulating any overtime cost or any comp time. There you go. Comp time. We give a day off during the week, and then you work Saturday. But I'll get more done if I have everybody there the Fridays a week versus the Saturday, because we got one man there on the hill and a skeleton there. So there's really nothing, except running fuel and, the driver going out, riding, checking on boxes, which we can do during the week, and me going over to the sale and working over there, sitting over there, tell you the truth.
So do you have full days on Saturdays?
Yes. We just
I
trade
didn't
off
mean
a
to
day.
take
on
over
the
No,
your
you're
spot, I
fine
was
because
just
you
interjecting.
went deeper in there than I did.
So for clarification, then, on the landfill, you're open on Tuesdays and Thursdays when the satellites are closed?
Yes,
Because you're cleaning up?
yes. The landfill's open
I got you.
6 days a week, technically.
A lot of people work during the week, and on Saturdays they try to catch up. Can they still go to the landfill and dump somewhere there? I mean, well, it's like a satellite there then, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the sites are open.
The site will be open, okay.
Let's be clear, we're talking about the convenience
The
center.
convenience.
Yeah,
The
but
convenience center that's outside the gate.
outside the gate, that's right, yeah, okay. I don't know, I mean, Gary knows, I mean, he sees the traffic, I don't,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you're gonna have that one or two that's gonna be upset because
Oh,
they were
yeah.
doing a project on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I understand that. It's just like, if we're putting our employees out of money, if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. As long as we're, like Mr. Vaughn was saying as well, as long as we can work to the convenience of the citizens as well and get this day off and save some money,
But yet they're not out of money because Mr. Easter said they had a day off during the week.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah.
the only reason why I'm.
Employees,
that
it wouldn't
makes up.
affect them at all.
Yeah.
Can you put a
Right.
dollar amount to what the savings would be? Any idea what you'd save by doing this?
Well, I actually haven't looked at it that deep, but we can.
well, plus,
It wouldn't really change salaries, correct?
No.
so a person would be off,
So what else?
it may help with
they
retention too,
say?
because a person will be off Saturday and Sunday to get the weekend off.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
operational costs,
Yeah, okay.
fuel, some stuff
Yeah,
like that.
that's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah, 'cause-
It's not affecting the salaries, but you're saving the fuel,
Sa-
the operating
Gotcha.
time on the
Yes.
machinery and whatnot. But then also, the convenience centers are open on certain holidays.
Yeah.
So even on holidays,
Yeah.
we're running some time.
Some people will get
You all
mad.
talk to the towns about this. Have you all talked to the towns?
The
No.
the towns have gotten copies of the fee proposal, yes, they're aware.
And as far as Saturdays, the town don't run on Saturdays anyway.
Who,
They don't collect
They
trash.
collect
They don't
No, they collect
on
trash on
They are partners in this landfill, and it was distressing when I learned that one of the towns was not doing what they should be doing when it comes to funding
oh,
the
there we go
landfill.
again. So,
There you go. There he go. Didn't open that door.
whose district does the landfill in?
Oh, well, never.
Sounds like it's your problem.
It is?
Because my site's open until 7:23.
Hey, actually, I got two convenience sites that are open. The landfill, the convenience site, and the one on Bible Road. So we are-
Any decision we make, Mr. Costa, somebody's gonna be this anyway. But it sounds like it's a good idea, it's a thought, and I like what you
Again,
think.
every line item is important to somebody. That's right.
The other thing I had was, right off, just a rough guess, what was that increase that the school is asking for over what we had kind of budgeted for? Did y'all kind of, is there a guesstimation of
I
that?
don't even wanna hear it.
I don't want to hear it now.
Here's that in that document
All right, I am going
$1 million
to say,
more.
I'm going to say this now. Somebody just handed me a knife and let me cut my throat, okay? In that proposal that Davenport done here, they were talking about a 10-cent tax increase over a 3 to 6 year window. Well, folks, we can do it in 1 year of that overpayment of $1.2 million over the required local effort. Take that from the school, 1 year. Because the,
Yeah, we just,
Yeah.
because what I'm saying is the required local effort, as I understand it, state and federal regulations are saying it. And I have yet to find a state official, elected official, to tell me anything different than if y'all pay the required local effort with the funding that the feds and the state sends down, your children are supposed to be able to graduate and be competitive, whether they go to trade school, enter the workforce, or go to college. So, why are you paying over? I'm asking a question that does not have to be answered right now. That's all I'm saying.
I will answer for you one day, John.
I know you will. I know you will.
All right, any more questions on the budget, comments?
No question. I'm not, Wednesday night, I'm not, Wednesday during the day, I got interviews all day, so I won't be CRC, but I think, Greg, are you going to the CRC meeting? I need, Sherman, I think you're going, you might want to ask.
I will be going, and I will introduce him.
Yeah, well, let me get you the point, too. You need to ask Melody, is our budget going to stay the same? Because I think they want, asking for more money for the counties to come together for regional, right. So anyway, just want to make sure, you might want to ask that question. So anyway, I want to throw that at, thank you, that's it.
And what are we going to do with, when she comes with the fund of $4,900, are we going to accept it, or are we going to?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about now?
Yeah. When they make so much, when we make so much money, we'll get a return
Right.
back on what being a part of our, since we're part of that regional. And we have the option to just put it back and then write them another check, or we say keep the funds and we pay the difference or whatever. So we can decide that. But she's coming to explain that financial stuff to us. Okay.
As long as there's a paper trail. No
There's a
more
paper trail.
RAs.
I recommend we not accept it and apply it. Do this
Many
next year.
thanks to staff for the work on this budget. I know it's an involved process. Any final comments from board members tonight? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
Oh, I've never been opposed to a landfill study. I'm opposed to John wanting to close the landfill.